Hey everyone, this is Beatbox here, and in today's video I'll be teaching you all how to do the hard bass. So in today's video we will go over what hard bass is, how to do it. We'll also talk about a theory on how the hard bass could theoretically be working, anatomically speaking, what muscles and tissues are used, why it feels and sounds the way it does, and why the sounds that come out of your throat when learning the sound come out and feel the way they do. I'm gonna try my best to provide an explanation for all of that, so that's gonna be really interesting. What it is, how to do it, how it could be working, and at the end we'll also discuss how to practice the sound, how to develop the texture, and maybe a technique or two as well. So, the hard bass. I feel like the hard bass has always been kind of a mystery in the beatboxing world. I think mostly because it just has so many different names and so many different definitions. Like, I've heard people call it the hard bass, but also the hardcore bass, the demon bass, the evil bass, the monster bass, and other things as well. And also the definitions for the sound are really, really different. Like, some people say it's more epiglottal, more like a chest bass. Some people say it's more with the false folds, like a throat bass. Some people believe it's inward. Some people believe it's a mix of things, like a chest bass and something else. So there's a lot of conflicting opinions surrounding this sound and no real clear definition for it. And so I am pretty confused. I cannot say with 100% certainty that the sound that I'm going to be teaching you guys today is the same sound that Thomas Zacre, the amazing beatboxer from Chile that discovered this sound and popularized it. I can't say with 100% certainty that the sound that I'm going to be teaching you guys today is the same sound that he does, simply because there is no real clear definition for it. But I think from my observations and from the research that I've done about this sound, I'm guessing I got pretty close. So the sound that I'm going to be teaching you guys in today's video, how difficult is it to do it, right? On the scale of 1 to 10, how difficult is it to do this sound? Personally, I would place this one at around a 4 or a 5. It's not a very difficult sound to get, but it is a very difficult sound to practice and master, mostly because it's just very, very, very painful. I have to say right away, I want to say this right from the start of the tutorial, if you overdo this sound in the beginning, if you push your throat past its limits in the beginning, you can seriously damage your throat. You can actually injure yourself. Thomas Zacre, the inventor of this sound, once said in an interview that I'll link in the description, that in the very beginning when he was practicing this sound, he used to overdo it a lot, and there would be moments where he would actually cough up real blood and his throat would hurt a lot. So he actually had to go to a voice doctor, where they then did a laryngoscopy, which is like shoving a camera down someone's throat, and they found out that his throat was in horrible condition because of too much hard bass. He mentioned that he couldn't eat properly and that everything was hurting. So please, when practicing this sound, do not overdo it. Do not push your throat past its limits, and keep a nice bottle of water near you when practicing this sound, because when it starts hurting, I recommend just stopping and drinking water and then trying to get it later, because you can seriously injure yourself. So for step number 1, we are going to be starting with a throat bass. So it would be handy to know how to do the throat bass. Now, I don't think you necessarily have to be good at the throat bass in order for you to learn this sound. I just found a lot of similarities between the hard bass and the throat bass. I found that a lot of the texture and grittiness and evilness of the hard bass you can just pretty much get from modifying the throat bass and adding on to the throat bass. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the throat bass, and the first thing that I want you guys to do is get your throat bass and tighten it up a little bit. So I know that a lot of people have a more loose and airy kind of throat bass texture just by nature, which often sounds a lot like la la la, ha, 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 ha. It's kind of loose and airy like that, but what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to take that texture and turn that la into more of like a la. Wait a second. La, la, la. Just tighten it up a little bit. Really use less air, because, well, of course, because the hard bass is a very tight sound, but also because for this next thing that we're going to be doing, you really do not want to be using a lot of air, because I found that that's just more painful. So basically, what I want you guys to do now is I want you guys to take that slightly tighter throat bass, and what we're going to be doing right now is pretty interesting. We are going to be taking that throat bass, and what we have to do is we have to try to make it sound and feel very pressurized, kind of painful, very ugly, and unpleasant. So let me demonstrate what I'm talking about. So that's the sound we're looking for. We're not looking for like a more vocalized chest bass type sound. No, we're really looking for like a tight, painful throat bassy sound. It just sounds really sharp and with a commuted in there. Now, what that feels like is, well, first of all, it feels pretty painful, but it feels very bubbly, super tight, but most importantly, it feels like something bigger is starting to vibrate. Not like a chest bass vibration. Like, sure, that one's also pretty big, but it feels different. Feels more sharp. Now, so what we did here is we took our throat bass, tightened it up, and then tighten it up even more. So what I think could be happening here is the throat bass. This is by no means a throat bass tutorial. I'm just going to quickly go over what muscles and tissues are used for the throat bass. Basically, what happens when we do the throat bass is really we're only using the vocal cords and the false folds. That's for just a regular, nice, loose, relaxed kind of throat bass. But when we tighten it up, what happens is the arytenoid cartilages get involved. Now, the arytenoid cartilages are these two cartilages in your throat that are basically responsible for the relaxation and tightening of the vocal cords. So what happens when we tighten our throat bass is the arytenoid cartilages get involved and they tighten everything up a little bit. They might also start vibrating. The arytenoid cartilages really aren't new to vibrating. I've seen quite some laryngoscopy footage where people are doing like throat singing or throat bass. If they're not doing it very loosely, you can see the arytenoid cartilages kind of vibrating, probably together with the false folds. And so what happens when we push our throat bass like that is basically we just squeeze it all together so much and we push it all so hard that the arytenoid cartilages really become the main thing that's vibrating. Because, I mean, the arytenoid cartilages are pretty massive. So I think when we tighten everything up like that, they start vibrating like crazy. So basically the tightness of everything is because we're literally tightening it up like a bunch. The bigger rumble in there is probably from the arytenoid cartilages. The bubbliness is from the saliva that's in there, and the little muted rumble is because our voice is still in there. And this is what I want to focus on right now, because we're moving on to step 2 now, which is taking the vocalization out. Because what we did here is we took the throat bass, which is a vocalized bass, we pressurized it a bunch, and now we're going to take the vocal out, and we should be left with just the clicky rattle of the arytenoid cartilages. So we basically want to take the voice out of the and we should be left with more like a Now this sound right here, this is what a lot of people would call the evil bass. And then how people would normally tell you to get the hard bass would just be, hey, dude, you just take the evil bass and you just do it with this tongue position. And that's how you get the hard bass. I mean, that sounds pretty similar to hard bass, but hard bass still has a way thicker texture, and a nice good hard bass is a way lower frequency. So I was just looking on the internet for answers, and I've found a video somewhere of Thomas Zachary himself saying that his hard bass is a mix between the evil bass sound that we just learned and a chest bass. And he says that it's just a mix of both. That really perplexed me at first, because I could not get my epiglottal chest bass to work with the two completely different realms for me. But I did know that I could do a thicker texture, and I knew there was a difference between and so I had to do what I had to do, and I used my fingers, and what I found out was pretty cool. The difference between and is that when you're doing is the epiglottis is actually involved and it is actually vibrating a little bit, but it's not vibrating like it does in a chest bass. It's not a free, loose, and airy vibration. It's like a really crammed and tiny type vibration. So basically how you get from the yeah to the yeah is you have to tighten everything up even more and maybe even squeeze your throat a little bit. Because what it felt like I was doing is it felt like the epiglottis was sort of, by pressurizing everything even more, I sort of dipped a part of the epiglottis into the vibrating mess, and the epiglottis started vibrating a little bit as well. And since the epiglottis is pretty massive, it probably contributed a little bit to the mass of the thing vibrating, and so maybe it slowed down the frequency a little bit. But it's not like the whole epiglottis was vibrating, but it was just crammed in there as well. So to help us achieve that, we could try and squeeze the neck a little bit, like just a little bit. I found that helps. And really just use more pressure. So step 3 now would really be just taking the thicker vibration and doing it together with the tongue position, which by the way is not a very hard one. It's just ow, ow. It's like a very weird vowel. Very weird vowel. And then if you do that with the thicker texture, you should get the hard bass. I mean, that sounds a lot like it, right? So really that's it. So to recap, what we just did here is we took the throat bass and we tightened it up. Then what we did from there is we tightened it up even more and we made it sound really ugly and feel really painful and bubbly by getting our arytenoid cartilages involved. Then what we did from there is we removed the vocalization and focused on just the rattly, clicky vibration of the arytenoid cartilages and the false folds probably. Then what we did from there is we tried cramming more of our throat in there to get a thicker texture by probably getting the epiglottis to vibrate with the rest of the things a little bit. And what we did from there is we just applied the tongue position, and that's how we got the hard bass. This is really difficult to explain. So that's it for the tutorial part of the video. Sorry if it was very long and wordy. English is not my first language and I'm just trying my best to provide as much useful information as possible. Now let's quickly go over a couple ways to practice the sound. Trying to push the low frequency through short bursts, like maybe using more air at the start and then tightening it up. So like, and maybe trying to do more consistent tones, like to practice the pain away. So yeah, that's really it for this tutorial. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure to dislike the video and unsubscribe from the channel.